My name is Lesley Kailani Glenn. I am 56 years old. Currently, I live in Southern Oregon, but I am originally from Hawaii. Lesley is a fiercely independent woman who loves life to the fullest and embraces every experience that comes down her pathway, looks for opportunities for self-growth, is very compassionate for others, wants to leave a legacy for her children. Some of my favorite things are rescue animals, and I love to hike and I love to backpack. I love the outdoors, so snorkeling, anything that can get me outside to enjoy nature. Then on the opposite side, I also love my quiet time. I love to meditate, I love to read, I love to crochet and to play in my art studio. So I think I'm very multi-passionate. I found the lump on my own. I was going through a very stressful time in my life. My daughter had been assaulted and my son was in a near-fatal car accident. And so once, doing the self-exam, and then I felt the lump on my own, had always gone for my mammograms. I was 47 at the time, and I felt a lump, and I was like, well, of course, right? Everything comes in threes. And so when I felt it, I just knew. I was like, dang it, I have breast cancer. And went to my PCP, and sure enough, he felt it, and I was fast-tracked all the way through getting another mammo, and then getting an ultrasound, and then getting a biopsy, and then getting diagnosed, and then having the rest of the scans, and then finally diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. When I was first diagnosed, because they wanted to start me on chemo right away, they automatically staged me at stage 2B. When I went through my other scans and they said, we see something suspicious in your bones, and I said, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that I have bone cancer? And they were like, no, it may mean that your breast cancer has spread to your bones. And so that was the first time that I had ever heard of metastatic, that it bypassed, because I have no lymph node involvement at all. So the breast cancer just totally bypassed all my lymph nodes and went straight into my bones. I was in shock. I remember when walking out of my very first oncology appointment when I was supposed to go to chemo, and they handed me all of these magazines, brochures, pamphlets. They told me to pick out a beanie for my head, to grab a couple scarves. And so I get into the car and I have all of this stuff. And I'm just in shock. And I went home, I went upstairs, and I just looked at myself in the mirror. And I literally fell to the ground and cried out and said, God, I do not want to do this. I do not want to do this. So it was devastating. I was doing what I'd always wanted to do in my nonprofit. I loved it. And there was no time for cancer. My daughter was a senior in high school, and she was a competitive cheerleader, and I missed all of her senior year. So it was very hard the first year. I feel like I've grown up, like I understand who Lesley is truly. I'm not only a mom and a daughter and a friend and a sister, but I am who I am, and I am enough. I feel like I am empowered. And I'm always looking for ways for self-growth. I believe that I will continue to grow. into myself for as long as I live. And that's what I want to do. If my story can help at least one person, or to bring hope for someone that is newly diagnosed to realize that, oh my gosh, there's someone that's been here for 8.5 years. I know for me, when I was newly diagnosed, I looked at all of the others that were there that had lived past 5 years, and I'm like, that's what I want. And I don't live in my disease, I live with my disease. And that's very important to me. And I want to share that with people. Though you have this diagnosis, you don't have to live in it. You can live with it. And it doesn't need to consume your life. The divorce was my decision. It wasn't an easy decision, but living with this diagnosis for as long as I have, my philosophy of living is different than my husband's. And we have two different perspectives on what it means to live out your later years. And I decided that I just couldn't do it his way, and I didn't want to do it his way. And it was very painful. We've been married for 30 years. It was 30 years on September 11th. And we have 3 grown children. And my kids blamed me at first, like, what are you gonna do, Mom? You have cancer, what do you think you're gonna do? And I'm like, I'm gonna be fine, because I know who I am, and I know what I wanna be, and I know the things that I wanna do, and I wanna do them, and I don't want any obstacles in my way. The most difficult thing living with MBC for me is probably the uncertainty of not knowing when it's going to progress. An example of that was, I was lucky to be NED for 5 years. And I remember going into the oncologist's office and asking if I could be put on surveillance and stop treatment. And she said, okay, well, before we do that, let's go ahead and scan you. And doggone it, if it didn't come back. And so I realized that, all right, this is the real deal. Stage 4 is the real deal. And even currently, I'm facing progression. So it's the uncertainty of, it coming back, progressing, and where's it gonna go next? There are days where, and I allow those pity party days to happen, because I know that if I feel those feelings, if I lean into them and allow them to happen, then I know that they're going to pass through. And then the next day, or maybe even a few hours later, I'm gonna feel better. So I never, ever disregard the emotions that I'm feeling anymore. I make sure that I give them a place. I don't want the negative ones to live with me, but I do give them their time. And then I'm like, okay, we're done here. So let's move on. I have a very supportive family in the islands. My kids have actually become more supportive of me. And I think it's just, they never wanted to admit that their mom has stage 4 cancer. It's a hard thing to swallow. And then I have, the MBC community, which I just adore. And then I have, a handful of close girlfriends that have been by my side since day one that will always be there for me. Project Life is really my passion project. I've always been an advocate, even before I had cancer. And so that is where my heart is. And when I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, I knew I wanted to give back to the community. I just didn't know how or where my voice was going to fit in. And then a couple years ago, I realized that there was a gap in survivorship programs for those of us that are living with MBC. And so I decided to bridge that gap. And so I built a virtual wellness house with different rooms. And it's been fabulous. And so now we're integrative oncology. So not only do we have a mentorship program, but we also do nutrition classes, and we have a Project Life home chef, and we do parenting classes, we do healing circles. So we're really building a community for people to feel that they belong, that this is a place for them, that they can just be themselves. The flower in my hair I was encouraged to wear it from my new friend, Fua. And in Hawaii, when you're growing up and you wear flowers in your hair, if you are taken, if you have a boyfriend, you wear it on the right side, and if you're single, you wear it on the left side. So I feel like this weekend has been empowering in that this is the first thing that I've really done as an individual without like texting home and checking in. And it's like, Lesley, this is your new beginning. Fua was on my flight from Phoenix to Flagstaff. We got on the plane together, and she was in front of me. She turned around and she had the metastatic breast cancer colors on her mask. And I said, "Are you going to the retreat?" And she said yes. And then she got really excited. And then we just started to talk, and we got off the plane and we were just chit-chatting. And then she took off her mask, and I said, "Are you Pacific Islander?" And she said, "Yeah." She goes, "But I'm Samoan." And I said, "Well, I'm Native Hawaiian." And it is the first time in my 8.5 years that I've met another Pacific Islander. And so it was very exciting to meet her and know that there's a kindred spirit there that relates, that looks like me, that understands the culture. And so it was, I mean, for me, that was like the best thing this weekend, was having another Pacific Islander involved. My photo shoot today was very surreal in a way, because I knew that it was a marker point in my life with what I'm going through personally. And I knew that I needed to embrace that. So I did the best that I could. And it was fabulous. It was phenomenal. It was freeing. I feel like, okay, my therapist would be very proud of me. But now I can, you know, I'm ready. I'm ready to embark in this next part of my life. And I'm really excited about it. Being in the house with the other women it's been inspiring for me. I think that because of my longevity of living with MBC, my perspective is a little bit different, maybe a little bit more mature. But I feel like being with them and listening to them, it inspires me, and I'm gonna take the things that I hear from them, the connections that I've made, and use it for what I do with Project Life. You know, so not only was it inspiring to hear all of their stories and to get to know new people that you know that you will have a friendship with forever because of this tight bond, but also it's a good, fresh reminder for me of why I do what I do. I did have survivor's guilt in the beginning. And I remember that I talked to a therapist about it, and she said, "Why do you feel guilty? Were you the cause? Were you the reason why they died?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Then you can be sad, but don't feel guilty." And she also said, because my mentor had passed on when I was feeling it the most, she said, "What would Jill tell you?" And I said, "Jill would tell me to dance." And she said, "Then that's what you need to do. Be sad, but don't feel guilty because it's not your fault. And that made a big impact on me. So I feel very sad when I lose my friends. And I grieve, and I still grieve when I think about some of the women that have really impacted my life. And I think that I will always grieve, but I know that there is a reason and a purpose for as long until I start progressing, that there are things that I want to do for my community, and if I can do them, then I will. I think fear less, I see it as two words, as fear less. And in the beginning, I was very fearful, and as the years go on, I fear less. I know that my mortality, is at hand, and I know that I will probably die from this disease, but I'm not fearful of that. What I'm fearful of is not living my life to the fullest. So as I continue on this path, I want to fear less and do more. I think the one message that I want to encourage everyone else that lives with metastatic breast cancer, no matter if you're Black, white, no matter, your gender identity, is that you have a unique story and someone needs to hear it. And it doesn't matter what you've gone through. There is someone that needs your story, so don't ever be afraid to tell it.